The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Harmony Creek as Scarlett O'Malley loaded her few possessions into a weathered saddlebag. Her wild red hair caught the light like flames, and her emerald eyes blazed with defiance. Despite the exhaustion etched across her face, the townspeople watched from behind curtains and doorways, their whispers following her like vultures circling prey. "Good riddance," muttered Mrs. Abernathy from her porch, loud enough for Scarlett to hear. That wild child never should have been allowed to stay here after her father died. Scarlett's jaw tightened, but she kept her head high. At 22, she had endured 3 years of increasingly hostile treatment since Patrick O'Malley's death had left her alone in a world that had no place for a woman who refused to be tamed. Her father had been the town's blacksmith, respected for his skill if not his Irish heritage. But Scarlett's attempts to continue his work had scandalized the community. "A woman has no business working with fire and metal," Reverend Caldwell had proclaimed from his pulpit. "It goes against the natural order that God intended." But it wasn't just her unconventional profession that had made her an outcast. Scarlett had the unfortunate habit of speaking her mind, defending the weak, and refusing to bow to authority simply because it wore a suit or carried a Bible. When the banker's son had attempted to force his attentions on young Mary Peterson, Scarlett had publicly confronted him, earning his family's eternal enmity. When the town council had tried to cheat the widow Morrison out of her late husband's property, Scarlett had stood up in the middle of their meeting and called them thieves. To their faces, each act of courage had cost her dearly. Customers stopped coming to her forge. Shopkeepers refused her business. The school children were forbidden from speaking to her, though she caught them sneaking glances with a mixture of fear and admiration that suggested they saw her as some kind of legendary figure. The final straw had come 2 weeks ago when Deputy Marshal Tucker, a man with wandering hands and a mean streak, had cornered her behind the general store. Scarlett's response had been swift and decisive, a knee to his groin followed by a right hook that had left him sprawled in the dirt with a broken nose. Unfortunately, Tucker's version of events, which painted Scarlett as an unhinged woman who had attacked him without provocation, had been the one the sheriff chose to believe. "Miss O'Malley," Sheriff Brooks had said, his tone carrying the weight of finality, "I think it would be best for everyone if you found somewhere else to settle. The good people of Harmony Creek deserve peace." Scarlett had looked around the sheriff's office at the good people. He referenced Tucker with his swollen face, Banker Morrison with his calculating eyes, and Mrs. Abernathy with her pursed lips, and realized that she was fighting a battle she could never win. Not because she wasn't strong enough, but because they had already decided she was the enemy. Now, as she secured her father's hammer and tongs in her saddlebag alongside her few personal belongings, Scarlett felt the familiar ache of loss, not just for her father, whose gentle strength had been her anchor, but for the life she had tried to build in his memory. The forge that had been her sanctuary would be sold to pay her debts, and some other man would take over the work that had been in her blood since she was old enough to hold a hammer. Scarlett, the soft voice, belonged to Mary Peterson, the girl she had defended. The teenager approached nervously, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "I wanted to thank you for what you did, and to tell you that not everyone here thinks you're wrong." Scarlett's expression softened for the first time in days. "You be careful, Mary. Don't let them make you small just because it's easier for them." "Where will you go?" Mary asked, tears glistening in her young eyes. "West," Scarlett replied simply. She had heard stories of frontier towns where a person's skill mattered more than their gender, where the harsh realities of survival took precedence over social conventions. "I'll find a place where being strong isn't considered a sin." As Scarlett mounted her father's old horse, Thunder, she took one last look at Harmony Creek. Despite everything, it hurt to leave. This place held her childhood memories, her father's legacy, and 3 years of her adult life. But staying would mean slowly dying inside, becoming the meek, silent woman they wanted her to be. The road led west through rolling hills and dense forests, the sounds of civilization gradually giving way to the calls of birds and the rustle of wind. Through leaves, for the first time in months, Scarlett felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Out here, there was no one to judge her, No one to tell her what a proper woman should or shouldn't do. It was near sunset when she crested a hill and saw smoke rising from a valley below. As she drew closer, she realized it wasn't coming from a chimney, but from what appeared to be a brush fire that was spreading dangerously close to a ranch house and barn. Even from a distance, she could see a lone figure trying desperately to beat back the flames with what looked like a wet blanket. Without hesitation, Scarlett spurred thunder down the hillside. As they approached, she could see that the lone figure was a tall man with dark hair, his shirt soaked with sweat and singed in several places. He was fighting a losing battle against the spreading fire, and exhaustion was clearly taking its toll. "The creek," Scarlett shouted as she dismounted. "Is there a creek nearby?" The man looked up, startled by her sudden appearance. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and his face bore the weathered lines of someone who had spent years under the western sun. "About a quarter mile that way," he called back, pointing toward a line of cottonwood trees. "But I don't have time to—" "I'll get water," Scarlett interrupted, already moving toward thunder. "You keep fighting it from this side." She grabbed the 2 water buckets hanging from her saddle and urged thunder toward the trees at a gallop. The creek was shallow but fast-moving, and she filled the buckets quickly before racing back to the fire line. The stranger had managed to slow the fire's advance toward the buildings, but barely. For the next 2 hours, they worked in silent coordination. Scarlett made repeated trips to the creek while the man used the water strategically, focusing on creating fire breaks and protecting the structures. Neither spoke except to shout warnings or directions, but their teamwork was instinctive and effective. When the last of the flames were finally extinguished, both of them collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily and covered in soot. The ranch, house and barn were safe, though several acres of pasture had been blackened. "Name's Garrett Kane," the man said finally, extending a dirt-streaked hand. "And I owe you more than I can ever repay." "Scarlett O'Malley," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "And you don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same." Garrett's laugh was rough with exhaustion. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that's not true. I've had neighbors watch my place burn before rather than risk getting their hands dirty." Scarlett studied his face, noting the genuine gratitude mixed with something that might have been admiration. "Then you need better neighbors. Maybe I just found one," Garrett said quietly. "Where are you headed, Miss O'Malley?" "Wherever the road takes me," Scarlett replied honestly. "I'm looking for a place where a woman can make an honest living without causing a scandal." Garrett was quiet for a long moment, his storm-gray eyes studying her face in the gathering twilight. "What kind of work do you do?" "Blacksmithing," Scarlett said, bracing herself for the usual reaction of shock or disapproval. Instead, Garrett's face lit up with something that looked like hope. "Are you any good at it?" The question caught Scarlett off guard. No one had asked about her skill in years, only her right to practice it. "I'm very good at it," she said simply. "My father taught me everything he knew, and I've been working iron since I was 12. "Miss O'Malley," Garrett said, getting to his feet and extending his hand to help her up. "How would you feel about staying here for a while? I've got a forge that hasn't been used in 2 years, more work than I can handle, and a powerful respect for anyone brave enough to ride into a fire to help a stranger." Scarlett looked at this man who had called her brave instead of wild, who had asked about her skill instead of her propriety, and felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the Old West. Scarlett has found an unexpected ally in Garrett Kane. But will their partnership grow into something more? And what challenges await them in this untamed frontier? Find out in the next chapter. 3 weeks had passed since Scarlett O'Malley had helped Garrett Kane save his ranch from the brush fire. And in that time, she had discovered something she had never expected to find, a place where she truly belonged. Garrett's forge was smaller than her father's had been, but it was well equipped and positioned perfectly to catch the morning light. More importantly, it came with no judgment, no whispered criticism, and no one telling her that her work was unwomanly. Garrett had been true to his word about having more work than he could handle. The nearest blacksmith was 3 days' ride away, and the growing community of ranchers, miners, and settlers in the area had been making do with inadequate repairs and crude metalwork for years. Scarlett's rival had been like rain after a drought. Miss O'Malley called Tom Bradley, a grizzled prospector who had ridden in that morning with a broken pickaxe. "You work magic with that iron. This tool's better than when I first bought it." Scarlett wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of soot across her skin. "Good iron deserves good treatment. Mr. Bradley, take care of your tools, and they'll take care of you." "Yes, ma'am," Bradley grinned, counting out coins into her palm. "You can bet I'll be back when I need more work done." As Bradley rode away, Scarlett became aware of Garrett watching her. From where he was mending a fence nearby, over the past weeks, she had caught him observing her work with an expression she couldn't quite read. It wasn't the suspicious surveillance she was accustomed to, but something that looked almost like wonder. "You know," Garrett said, walking over to the forge, "I've been thinking about what you said that first night, about needing better neighbors." Scarlett set down her hammer and turned to face him. "Fully. What about it?" "I was wrong," Garrett continued, his storm gray eyes serious. "I don't need better neighbors. I needed you." The simple honesty in his words made Scarlett's heart skip a beat. Over the weeks, she had come to appreciate not just Garrett's fairness as an employer, but his character as a man. He treated her with respect, valued her opinions, and never once suggested that her strength was anything other than an asset. "Garrett," she began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish," he said. "I've been watching you work, and it's not just your skill with iron that impresses me. It's your courage, the way you helped me fight that fire without a second thought, the way you stand up to men twice your size when they try to shortchange you, the way you defend what's right even when it costs you." Scarlett felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the forge. "I just do what needs doing." "That's exactly what I mean," Garrett said, stepping closer. "You see what needs doing, and you do it, regardless of what others think. Do you know how rare that is? How brave?" The word brave hung between them like a bridge. Scarlett had been called many things in her life: wild, unnatural, unwomanly. Dangerous but brave was not one of them, at least not until Garrett Kane had entered her life. "The people in Harmony Creek didn't see it that way," Scarlett said quietly. "Then they were fools," Garrett replied with such conviction that Scarlett felt tears prick her eyes. "Scarlett, I want to ask you something, and I need you to consider it seriously." "What is it?" "Stay," Garrett said simply, "not just for a few more weeks or until you find something better. Stay permanently. Be my partner in this ranch, in this life. Marry me." Scarlett's breath caught in her throat. She had not expected this, though looking back, she realized the signs had been there. The way Garrett's eyes followed her movements, the pride in his voice when he introduced her to neighbors, the careful way he had been giving her more space in the house while still maintaining perfect propriety. "Garrett," she began, then stopped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. "I know it's sudden," Garrett said, his voice gentle but urgent. "But Scarlett, I've never met anyone like you. You're strong and brave and brilliant, and you make me want to be better than I am. This place has been just a ranch since I've been here, but with you, it could be a home." Scarlett looked around at the forge, the ranch buildings, the wide expanse of land that stretched toward distant mountains. For the first time in her adult life, she felt truly safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, safe to be herself, to speak her mind, to use her strength without apology. "What would people say?" she asked, though even as the words left her mouth, she realized she didn't care as much as she once would have. "The right people would say I'm the luckiest man alive," Garrett replied. "The wrong people, well, their opinions never mattered much to me anyway." Scarlett studied his face, seeing nothing but sincerity and hope. "You really mean that, don't you? You're not trying to tame me or change me into something more acceptable, tame you?" Garrett laughed, but it was a sound of pure joy rather than mockery. "Scarlett, trying to tame you would be like trying to harness lightning. Possible, maybe, but you'd lose everything that makes it beautiful and powerful." The analogy made Scarlett smile despite her nervousness. "So you want to marry lightning?" "I want to marry you," Garrett said seriously. "The woman who rides into fires to help strangers. The woman who can forge beauty from raw iron. The woman who stands up for what's right even when the whole world tells her she's wrong. Scarlett felt the last of her resistance crumble. This man really saw her, and instead of being frightened or disapproving, he was awed. He was offering her not just love, but partnership, not just a home, but a place where her strength would be celebrated rather than condemned. "Yes," she said, the word emerging as barely more than a whisper. "Yes," Garrett repeated, his face lighting up with incredulous joy. "Yes, Garrett Kane," Scarlett said more firmly, stepping into his arms. "I'll marry you. I'll stay. I'll be your partner in all of this." Garrett lifted her off her feet and spun her round, both of them laughing with the pure joy of the moment. When he set her down, his hands remained on her waist, and his expression grew tender. "I love you, Scarlett O'Malley," he said. "I love your courage, your strength, your fierce heart. I love the way you make me believe that anything is possible." "I love you too," Scarlett replied, surprising herself with how easily the words came. "I love that you see strength where others see wildness. I love that you call me brave." As Garrett kissed her beneath the wide western sky, Scarlett marveled at the turn her life had taken. She had left Harmony Creek as an exile, driven out by people who couldn't understand her. But that exile had led her here, to this man who not only understood her but celebrated everything that made her different. 2 months later, they were married, in a simple ceremony attended by their neighbors, ranchers, miners, and settlers who valued character over convention. Scarlett wore a dress she had made herself, simple but elegant, and Garrett wore his best suit with a vest she had crafted from the finest leather she could find. The local preacher, a pragmatic man named Father Mackenzie, had agreed to perform the ceremony after seeing how Scarlett had helped several families in the area, with everything from horseshoes to complex metalwork. "Do you, Garrett Kane, take this woman to be your wife, to love and honor her, and to support her in all her endeavors?" Father Mackenzie asked. "I do," Garrett said firmly, his eyes never leaving Scarlett's face. "And do you, Scarlett O'Malley, take this man to be your husband, to love and honor him, and to build a life together based on mutual respect and partnership?" "I do," Scarlett replied, her voice strong and clear, as they exchanged rings, simple bands that Scarlett had forged herself from gold, that Garrett had panned from the creek. She reflected on how different this wedding was from the one she might have had in Harmony Creek. There, she would have been expected to promise obedience, to give up her work, to become a different person for the sake of social acceptability. Here, she was promising partnership, mutual support, and the courage to build something new together. Subscribe to our channel to see how Scarlett and Garrett's love story continues to unfold. They've found each other, but will their happiness last? What new challenges await this unconventional couple? In the wild frontier, don't miss the final chapter of this incredible journey. 1 year had passed since Scarlett and Garrett Kane had married, and their ranch had become a beacon of prosperity and progress in the valley. Scarlett's forge had grown into the most successful blacksmith operation in 3 counties, drawing customers from as far as Denver. Garrett's cattle ranch had expanded, and together they had built something neither could have achieved alone. But their happiness was about to face its greatest test. "Mrs. Kane," announced Deputy Marshal William Hayes as he dismounted in front of their house, his badge gleaming in the morning sun. "I have a warrant for your arrest." Scarlett set down the horseshoe she had been fitting and wiped her hands on her leather apron. Garrett emerged from the barn, his face immediately hardening when he saw the lawman's stern expression. "On what charges?" Garrett demanded, moving to stand protectively beside his wife. "Assault and battery," Hayes replied, unfolding an official-looking document filed by Deputy Marshal Tucker of Harmony Creek. "He claims Mrs. Kane attacked him without provocation 1 year ago, and new witnesses have come forward." Scarlett felt her blood run cold. She had known this day might come, but she had hoped that distance and time would protect her from her past. "Those witnesses are lying," she said firmly. "Tucker tried to force himself on me, and I defended myself. That's for a judge to decide, ma'am," Hayes said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with his duty. "You'll need to come with me to stand trial." "Like hell she will." Garrett stepped forward, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "This is harassment, pure and simple." Tucker's trying to get revenge because Scarlett humiliated him. Mr. Kane, I understand your feelings, but interfering with an arrest is a serious crime, Hayes warned. Don't make this worse than it has to be. Scarlett placed a gentle hand on Garrett's arm. It's all right, she said quietly. I'll go. I have nothing to hide. Scarlett, no. Garrett protested. You know what kind of justice you'll get in Harmony Creek. They've already made up their minds about you. Then I'll have to change them. Scarlett replied with more confidence than she felt. I won't run from this, Garrett. I won't let them make me a fugitive. The journey back to Harmony Creek took 3 days, and with each mile, Scarlett felt the weight of returning to a place that had rejected her so completely. But she also felt something else, the strength that came from knowing who she was and what she had accomplished. She was no longer the desperate young woman who had been driven out in shame. She was Scarlett Kane, successful businesswoman, beloved wife, and respected member of her community. Garrett had insisted on accompanying her, despite Hayes's protests that it wasn't necessary. Where my wife goes, I go, he had said with finality. That brooked no argument. When they arrived in Harmony Creek, Scarlett was surprised to see that the town had grown considerably. New buildings lined the main street, and there were faces she didn't recognize among the familiar ones. But the expressions of the people who remembered her ranged from hostile to simply curious. The trial was set for the next morning in the town's small courthouse that evening. As Scarlett sat in the jail cell that had been grudgingly provided for her comfort, she received an unexpected visitor. Scarlett. The voice belonged to Mary Peterson, though the girl had grown into a young woman. In the years since Scarlett had seen her. I heard you were back. Mary. Scarlett smiled, genuinely pleased to see her. You look well. Happy. I am, Mary said, glancing around nervously. I'm engaged to be married to Dr. Harrison's son. He's a good man who respects my opinions. I'm glad, Scarlett said sincerely. You deserve happiness. Mary leaned closer to the bars. Scarlett, I need you to know I'm going to testify for you tomorrow. I saw what really happened with Tucker, and I'm not going to let him lie about it. Scarlett felt a surge of gratitude and concern. Mary, that's brave of you. But it could cause you trouble. Your engagement, your reputation. You taught me not to let fear make me small, Mary replied firmly. Besides, I'm not the only one. Several people have come forward who are tired of Tucker's lies and intimidation. The next morning, the courthouse was packed with spectators from both Harmony Creek and the surrounding areas. Word had spread about the unusual case of the woman Blacksmith who had dared to fight back against the lawman's advances. Tucker took the stand first, telling his version of events with practiced ease. According to him, Scarlett had become enraged when he had politely declined her romantic advances and had attacked him in a fit of uncontrolled temper. She's always been unstable, Tucker testified, his broken nose having healed crookedly and giving him a permanently sinister appearance. Wild and unnatural, the kind of woman who doesn't know her place and lashes out at decent men trying to maintain order. Scarlett's lawyer, a young man named Thomas Mitchell whom Garrett had hired from Denver, cross-examined Tucker thoroughly. Deputy Tucker, is it true that you've been involved in 3 other incidents where you've been accused of inappropriate behavior toward women? Objection, called the prosecutor. Irrelevant, Your Honor, Mitchell replied smoothly. It goes to the pattern of behavior and credibility of the witness. I'll allow it, said Judge Harrison, Mary's future father-in-law, who was presiding over the case. Tucker's face flushed red. Those were all misunderstandings. Lies told by women with grudges. For different women, for different grudges, Mitchell pressed. That seems like quite a coincidence, doesn't it? When Mary Peterson took the stand, her voice was steady and clear. I saw Deputy Tucker corner Mrs. Kane behind the general store. She told him to leave her alone, but he grabbed her arm and tried to force himself on her. She defended herself, nothing more. One by one, other witnesses came forward. Tom Bradley, the prospector who had followed the case from Scarlett's new community, testified about her character and the respect she had earned from everyone who knew her. Dr. Harrison spoke about the medical supplies she had forged for his practice, work that had saved lives. Even Mrs. Morrison, the widow Scarlett had defended against the town council, found the courage to speak up. Scarlett O'Malley, Mrs. Kane never harmed anyone who didn't try to harm her, or someone weaker first, Mrs. Morrison testified. She's got more integrity in her little finger than some men have in their whole bodies. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source, Sheriff Brooks, the man who had essentially exiled Scarlett a year earlier, took the stand with obvious reluctance. "I've had time to think about what happened," he said slowly, "and I've learned some things about Deputy Tucker that I wish I'd known then." Mrs. Kane's story was consistent from the beginning, and Tucker's, well, his has changed several times. "Are you saying you believe Mrs. Kane was telling the truth?" Mitchell asked. Brooks was quiet for a long moment. "I'm saying that if I had to do it over again, I'd have investigated more thoroughly before asking anyone to leave town." When it was Scarlett's turn to testify, she told her story simply and honestly. She didn't try to portray herself as a victim or make excuses for her unconventional life. She simply told the truth about what Tucker had done and how she had responded. "I know I'm different from what people expect a woman to be," she said, looking directly at the jury. "I work with fire and iron. I speak my mind. I don't back down from bullies, whether they wear badges or not. But being different doesn't make me a criminal, and defending myself doesn't make me a villain." As they rode toward their ranch, their future, and their life together, Scarlett reflected on the job. Subscribe to our channel to see how Scarlett and Garrett's love story continues to unfold. They've found each other, but will their happiness last? What new challenges await this unconventional couple in the wild frontier? Don't miss the final chapter of this incredible journey. In his closing argument, the prosecutor painted Scarlett as a dangerous woman who threatened the natural order of society. But Mitchell's closing was simple and powerful. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, "this case isn't really about assault and battery. It's about whether we believe that women have the right to defend themselves against unwanted advances. It's about whether being strong and independent makes someone dangerous, or whether it makes them exactly the kind of person we need in our communities." The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, the foreman stood and declared, "We find the defendant, Scarlett Kane, not guilty on all charges." The courthouse erupted in applause, and Scarlett felt Garrett's arms around her as tears of relief streamed down her face. She had not only been vindicated, but she had gained something even more valuable, the respect of people who had once rejected her. As they prepared to leave Harmony Creek the next morning, Sheriff Brooks approached them. "Mrs. Kane," he said awkwardly, "I owe you an apology. I let my prejudices cloud my judgment, and I'm sorry for that." "Apology accepted, Sheriff." Scarlett replied graciously, "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." As they rode out of town for the second time, Garrett reached over and took Scarlett's hand. "How does it feel?" he asked. Scarlett looked back at Harmony Creek one last time, then turned toward the mountains that marked the way home. "Like flying," she said with a smile. "Like being exactly who I was meant to be." "The wild one who became brave," Garrett said softly. "No," Scarlett corrected, squeezing his hand. "The wild one who learned she was brave all along." As they rode toward their ranch, their future, and their life together, Scarlett reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been driven out as an outcast, but she had returned as a woman who knew her worth. More importantly, she had found a place where being brave wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. Thank you for joining us on Scarlett's incredible journey from exile to triumph. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories from the Old West. Scarlett and Garrett proved that true love sees strength where others see wildness, and that sometimes being driven out leads you exactly where you belong. What other tales of courage and love would you like to see? Let us know in the comments below.